What's going on, everybody? Paul here, coming at you with an ICO review. Today we're going to be polishing our resumes, dressing well, and putting ourselves out there on what seeks to be the largest work history data aggregation model on the blockchain, Doc.io. But first, I am just a dude who's using a computer. This is not financial advice of any kind. Yeah, see what I did there? I'm even willing to sing to you about how I'm not a financial advisor. Would you trust a dude that sings to you randomly over the internet? Do your own research. I just love you guys enough to let you know what I know and what's going on. So, let's get into it. Doc.io is conceptually similar to LinkedIn. They seek to incentivize users to store their work history data using their service by offering more visibility to potential employers. They seek to incentivize employers to use their service by offering access to a much wider applicant pool. This is all well and good for all parties involved, but on a macro scale, this existing model creates a major flaw that Doc.io wants to solve: data hoarding. Before we explore in more detail what data hoarding is and how Doc.io wants to solve it, let's take a quick look at the website. Now, I say a quick look because while it's polished and well done, it's pretty standard fare. You can see here a list of all kinds of articles and whatnot about the company, and only half of them work. Bitcoin Magazine doesn't link to an external source, however Steemit and Inc.com do. So that happens sometimes, but something to keep an eye on. Next up, we just have a comprehensive value proposition outlining existing problems in the field and how Doc.io wants to solve them. In particular, I really like this little graphic showing big data companies as oil rigs. It's been said that data is the new oil, and I think that's super true. I mean, let's think about it. Data is scarce, so is oil. Data generally requires work to obtain, so does oil. Its purity can be tested against an objective reality, as can oil, and it congregates in large quantities in specific areas, and it also powers the world, so data is really the new oil. Plus, you can use it without the risk of catching on fire. That's really cool. Next up, there are just some perks about the team and all of the backers. Everything's laid out in a very aesthetically pleasing format. We'll end up returning to some of these sections for emphasis momentarily, but I glaze over this rather quickly because it's largely a business one-pager, something a user can access seamlessly using a web browser to get a quick idea about some of the core facts pertaining to this particular project. Don't get me wrong, it's an extremely useful tool, but we want the meat of the issue. We don't just want to know the who, what, when, and where, but we also want to know the why. And so for that, we need to take a look in more detail at specifically the white paper. And here we are. It's a relatively short white paper, only about 25 pages, and of course, as most papers start with, the abstract. We have that right here. Like I mentioned, Doc.io is conceptually similar to LinkedIn with a few important distinctions. I'll try and break down the abstract for you now. So LinkedIn is a company, as is Upwork. They both seek to facilitate the service we talked about before, and it's a business model on which both of their successes as companies are derived. Even though an increasing number of people are looking for an increasing number of jobs, on average over their lifetime, there's still only so many potential clients to go around because so many people only get so many jobs. So largely the existing field is a zero-sum game in a lot of ways. That means someone who has a lot of connections and success on LinkedIn is less likely to have an Upwork account, and vice versa. This means that user data stored on LinkedIn, it becomes way more valuable to LinkedIn if that information remains in LinkedIn's ecosystem only and isn't really publicly acceptable without some kind of exchange. This means that not only are employees not getting access to the maximum number of potential jobs within their field, but employers are left with smaller applicant pools as these kind of isolated islands of data form, and user data becomes fragmented over many platforms that don't communicate with one another. Why would they? They don't have an incentive to. This is what Doc.io seeks to fix. They want to be the protocol that combines employee work history data with a tokenized incentive structure to maximize the benefit for both users and employees. It's pretty cool. Part 2 legitimates this value proposition with some absolutely stellar data demonstrating how freelance work is absolutely exploding. It's projected to be 40% of the US workforce by the year 2020. That means having a comprehensive, immutable work history that can be corroborated is more important than ever. It also really drives home the real-world economic cost of this kind of data hoarding from existing major companies that's going on. Quote, in previous years, LinkedIn provided an open API. 30,000 apps were built off of this API and innovation flourished. I had no idea about that. In February 2015, however, LinkedIn made an announcement stating it would restrict public API access. Consequently, many businesses have died and industry innovation has slowed. I had no idea there was such an endemic issue going on with this particular industry, but the death of businesses is not something to take lightly. Sure, lost profits, but an entire death of multiple businesses is a serious issue, and Doc.io looks like they want to solve it. Moving on to Section 3. Section 3 breaks down the respective roles within the platform. Users can easily port their data from participating applications, which is extremely useful for keeping track of work history. You can see here users will possess signed and verified content and choose where it is shared. They get to choose where it's shared. That's a big thing. Thus, owning their own data. They will also choose where their data, they will also choose where to share the data received from other platforms in their name. It is up to the user to opt into sharing any particular data with any specific application of their choosing. That means this is empowering the user to have absolute autonomy over their data. The next segment of users are what's known as applications, which is broken down into two subsets: data providers and consumers. Data providers are non-user entities that request to push signed data to user profiles. This is the important part. Quote, "It is important to note that the application does not publish data directly to the blockchain, but rather sends it to each user individually. Examples of such data would include CV updates, platform reviews and ratings, etc., even GitHub commits." That's super neat. Now, I did have a question about this area specifically that went unanswered. The token sale starting today left the Telegram account muted for security, which is totally understandable. But I didn't see an incentive mechanism outlined for the data providers. Assumingly, the signed data that is accepted by the user will result in a payment to the data provider in the form of platform tokens. But again, that's just my assumption as to how the incentive mechanism may work for the data providers. It's explored a little bit more further down in section 17.4, but in that section they use the term application, which encompasses both data providers and consumers. So I didn't want to misinform you guys and give you something that might not be true. So if anybody does have a definitive answer to this question, let me know down below in the comments, and you will receive one free thumbs up emoji. That's right, on the house. Thumbs up emoji coming your way if you can answer that question. The final form of access to the platform is the form of employees seeking to consume data from users. These are referred to as consumers. These consumers pay fees and platform tokens to access user data, but only the user data that that specific user has allowed the world to see. So it's not like, let's say, Verizon selling your phone records or anything without your knowledge. Only data that you say, yeah, this person can see this, can be seen. That's super cool. It's in this way that Doc.io seeks to preserve user privacy while maintaining data accessibility and aggregation in a token-based system of value that benefits everybody involved. Super neat. And finally, Section 4 outlines possible future use cases for the Doc.io platform. I found both of these really neat. The first is an automatic relationship manager, and it's pretty cool. Let's say Dave gets a job at Company A. Company A then updates their database to reflect Dave as an employee rather than an applicant. This status change alters Dave's relationship with Tom, who is now not only a friend but also a coworker. Assuming that Company A has or is a third party that is participating with Doc.io, this status change is automatically sent to Dave for approval, thereby allowing Dave to seamlessly keep track of his work history. The privacy of Dave's data is maintained throughout this process, as only Dave can decide whether or not his information is valid and who gets to see that information on his user profile. So that's really cool. It can automatically manage relationships and map those out for you. The next example offered is an in-work application performance manager. It's one of the most innovative and useful real-world potential applications I've found so far. Anyone who has worked on a group project knows how the workload generally gets split up. 90% of the work's going to 10% of the people. Well, now, if the platform on which you're collaborating is a participating third party of Doc.io, the work that each respective user and individual did will be attributed to the individual's profile. These potential applications have real-world implications that could truly disrupt an existing industry. Section 5 just gives a handful of reasons as to why the Ethereum network was chosen by Doc.io, and the remainder of the white paper is largely technical, which is good. I think it shows that the team knows what they're doing on a very intimate level. However, we really don't have time to go over all of these outline details, as comprehensive as they may be, in this single video, so I'll leave a link below in the description so you can explore this part of the white paper on your own time, should you so desire. Now, I did mention we would return to the homepage to help illustrate some further research, so let's head back over there. And here we are. Now, a very important part of any ICO is the team behind it. It's important for any reasonably future-thinking value proposition. While a great team can't make a bad value proposition good, a fantastic team is really needed for a fantastic value proposition. So let's see who's behind Doc.io's great value proposition. Well, we have Nick Macario. I'm gonna go with Macario. Nick Macario appears to be the CEO, and we'll go ahead and start with him. Here's his LinkedIn. And look at that, we're actually running into the exact problem Doc.io wants to solve. I can't look at this dude's LinkedIn. Now, I was able to log into a buddy's account on his computer and take a look at what Nick has done. He's worked on a lot of various startups, a lot of successful projects, so that's a good sign. However, this outlet doesn't have the same problem. We can check out what he's doing on Twitter. And one of the things he's most proud of is remote.com. This is where rubber meets the road. Nick seems to have already been very well established in the digital job market industry, with remote.com having over 2 million users. Beyond that, it's a platform focused specifically on borderless employment, primarily in the digital economy. I really can't think of a better position to be in when breaking into what is largely the exact same industry, only aided by digital ledger technology. This is such good news for Doc.io. They are very well positioned here. And it also looks like the co-founder, back over here, Mrs. Kaduri, she also helped to co-found remote.com. So they've been working together for a long while. Seems like they have a really great working relationship. And finally, perhaps the most important and often undersung member of any team, the lead developer. I'm going to apologize in advance since this is a Eastern European name, but I'm going to do my best. The research I did, it's Yevgeny Zabolotny? Mr. Zabolotny. We'll just go with Mr. Zabolotny. Alright, so Mr. Zabolotny seems to have worked on remote.com as well, meaning that this entire team has been working together for a long while. Again, unfortunately, same issue with LinkedIn. It's notoriously fussy with their data, so I couldn't find that. One thing I couldn't find as well is Mr. Zabolotny's GitHub. If anyone knows his username or has access to that information, I would absolutely love to check it out. Let me know below in the comments. However, nonetheless, it looks like all the core aspects that made remote.com a successful enterprise are being seamlessly transferred over in terms of manpower to Doc.io. So the team that was able to build a successful platform with over 2 million users is now working on a blockchain platform with a similar value proposition. That's pretty encouraging in my opinion. Finally, I always like to look at where the funds are going. A smaller portion of the funds are allocated to the token sale than I normally like to see. That's kind of made up by the fact that an equal amount, 30%, is going to ecosystem incentivization. I think that's a fine alternative, as it assumingly seeks to offer long-term incentives to users as the platform grows in adoption during those kind of critical early days. Overall, I think that's a really smart move, and I'm willing to take the hit on a smaller percentage of token sale allocation than I normally see for that very reason. In aggregate, 60% of the tokens are being used for users in one way or another. Also, they're only asking for $20 million for 1 billion tokens. In my opinion, that's the sweet spot for ICOs, between $10 million and $50 million. Realistically, any project you're building probably doesn't need much more than that. Here's an example. Tezos, they raised $200 million plus, and where are they now? They're embroiled in all kinds of lawsuits and issues, and they still haven't gotten off the ground. Same with Bancor. They raised tons of money, and they're doing okay, but they're really not a huge name. Now, there was a small project back in 2014, and they raised $18 million. So actually, they raised less than Doc.io, and that little project is named Ethereum. $18 million, Ethereum, think about it. So really, you don't need a ton of money, and they're asking for a legitimate amount within that sweet spot. So good on them for that. Overall, I think Doc.io is a very well-positioned project, backed by a team that's already demonstrated that they have success within the industry. A reasonable fundraising request further drives home the notion that this company isn't looking for overnight success or to fill their coffers through an ICO of donations. Rather, they seek to provide value through facilitating digital infrastructure in the long term, something that, through remote.com, they've proven that they have skill in. Overall, I think Doc.io is a pretty interesting project in my opinion. But that's all we have to look at for today. Thanks so much for all of the support, guys. This was a fantastic ICO to review. Giving a shout out to Zelky G, who recommended this review, and thanks for everyone's support. If you want to see more of this kind of content, let me know below in the comments, and go ahead and like, share, subscribe, follow us on Twitter, and check out our Discord. My name is Paul. Talk to you guys next time.